Some stories are forbidden for a reason, but we aren't afraid to tell them. Step into the world of the taboo and the unknown, where every secret has a dangerous price tag. Subscribe now and explore the forbidden truths of our world.
The room felt like it was holding its breath. 300 people. Architects, developers, city planners, the kind of names that appear on buildings. All of them turned at once to look at me. Champagne glasses frozen mid-air. Conversations dropped like broken things. And my husband stood at the podium with a smile I had never seen before. A smile that wasn't for me. That was the night I understood what 7 years actually cost. Let me back up. My name is Vivienne. I'm a structural engineer. The kind nobody pictures when they hear that word. People expect someone older, male, wearing a hard hat. What they get is me, 5'4", brown hair, the woman who once ate a granola bar over blueprints for 3 days straight, because a load-bearing calculation wasn't adding up. I love my work. I have always loved my work. That part matters for everything that comes after. I met my husband at a conference in Chicago. He was presenting on sustainable urban development, large mixed-use towers, the kind that try to look like they care about the environment while costing more per square foot than most people make in a year. He was confident at that podium, articulate, the kind of person who makes you feel, just by standing near them, that things will work out fine. His name was Edmund. We dated for 2 years. I wore a dress with architectural pleating. My mother said it was too structural for a wedding gown, and I told her that was exactly the point. Edmund laughed when I told him that story. Back then, he laughed at most things I said. For the first 3 years, we were good. Not perfect, but good. We worked at different firms. I was at a mid-size engineering consultancy. He was at a large development group, and our dinner conversations were about zoning laws and material costs and the politics of city council approvals. People thought we were boring. We thought we were happy. Then I started working on the Meridian Project. I want to explain what the Meridian Project was, because it matters. It was a proposal for a pedestrian bridge, not a simple one. A self-anchored suspension bridge with a dual helix aesthetic that also functioned as a public park, suspended 40 feet above the river. The structural challenge was considerable. The design had to carry live loads equivalent to a small plaza while maintaining visual lightness. I had been thinking about the underlying engineering framework for almost 4 years before I put anything on paper. I worked on it at home, mostly. Evenings, weekends, I had notebooks, actual paper notebooks with graph-ruled pages, where I'd sketched force diagrams, tested load distribution models, played with the geometry. My firm knew about it in broad terms. It wasn't their project yet. It was mine. The kind of thing you develop slowly, privately, until you know it's ready. Edmund knew about it too, of course. We were married. I talked about it over dinner. I left notebooks on the kitchen table. I asked him once, not seriously, what he thought about a particular anchoring approach. He shrugged and said he trusted my instincts. I remember thinking that was sweet. I didn't notice when he started asking more specific questions. It happened gradually. He'd ask what software I was using for the simulation. He'd pick up a notebook while I was cooking and say he was just curious. He started coming home later, saying his firm was pitching a new project. Something big, he said, but he couldn't share details yet. I was deep in my own work. I didn't press. The first sign I missed was a name. An engineer I vaguely knew, Simone, from a rival firm, mentioned at a networking event that Edmund's company was making a strong play for a river development contract in the city. She said something about a bridge concept they were presenting. Something with a helix structure. I remember my stomach tightening for just a moment. Then Edmund texted me asking what we wanted for dinner, and I let it go. The second sign I missed was worse. Edmund asked me, very casually, if I'd digitized all my Meridian sketches. I said yes, most of them. They were in a shared cloud folder we used for household documents. He said great and changed the subject. I did not think about why he'd asked. I should have. God, I should have. The cracks in our marriage came separately from all of this, and I want to be honest about that. We had stopped being kind to each other in the small ways that count. He would come home late and not apologize for the cold dinner. I would work through weekends and not notice he'd stopped trying to reach me. We were civil. We were roommates. We had not had a real conversation, the kind that goes somewhere unexpected, in probably 8 months. I found out about Petra on a Tuesday. I had come home early from a site visit because it had started raining and the concrete pour was delayed. I wasn't supposed to be home until 7, it was barely 3. The apartment was quiet when I walked in, and then it wasn't. I heard his voice from the bedroom, not the words at first, just the tone, a warmth I hadn't heard directed at me in a long time. I stood in the hallway for a moment, then I opened the door. He wasn't on the phone. Petra was a project coordinator at his firm. I knew her name from when Edmund had mentioned various colleagues, but I had never connected a face to it. Now I had. She was sitting on the edge of my bed wearing Edmund's shirt, and Edmund was standing near the window, and for a long moment none of us said anything. He told her to leave. He told me we needed to talk. I walked to the kitchen and poured a glass of water and stood there drinking it while he talked, and I remember thinking, with a clarity that surprised me, that I was not going to cry in front of him. He said it had been going on for 5 months. He said our marriage had been broken for longer than that, and I knew it was true. He said he was sorry, but not in the way people are sorry when they want to make it right. In the way people are sorry when they want to be released from guilt cleanly. I asked him to leave for the night. He did. I sat alone in the apartment for a long time. Then I opened my laptop and checked the shared cloud folder. 217 files, my load calculations, my sketches, my simulation exports, my structural notes going back 3 years. All of them had been accessed. Not just viewed, downloaded, 12 days earlier. I sat very still. I had a lawyer by the end of that week. I will not tell you I was calm about it. I wasn't. There were nights I didn't sleep, mornings I couldn't eat, an afternoon in a parking garage where I just sat in my car for 45 minutes because I couldn't make myself go back inside and be professional. But here is what I did not do. I did not confront Edmund. I did not send a furious email. I did not call his office. I hired a forensic technology consultant instead. Her name was Margot, and she was thorough and unbothered and exactly what I needed. Within 2 weeks, she had documented the complete access trail. Exactly which files, exactly which files, exactly which files, exactly when, from which device. Edmund's work laptop, 12 days before his firm filed for development competition that included a signature pedestrian bridge with a dual helix structure. I got copies of the competition, filing through public records. The bridge concept was mine. The load distribution logic was mine. The aesthetic rationale was mine. They changed the name, adjusted the visual rendering slightly, added a different color palette to the surface cladding. The structural bones were identical to what I had in those notebooks. I spent about 3 weeks feeling something I can only describe as ice-cold fury, not hot, not panicked, just cold and very focused. I documented everything. I created a time-stamped record of my original work, going back to the earliest notebooks, cross-referenced with the digital file metadata. My lawyer contacted a specialist in intellectual property and professional ethics in the engineering field. We had a strong case. We were ready to file. And then my firm told me I had been nominated for the Regional Design Excellence Award at the annual Architecture and Engineering Gala. I want to be careful about how I describe what happened next, because I know how it will sound. But please understand. Edmund found out about my nomination before I told him. I don't know how. Someone at his firm knew someone at mine, probably, or he'd seen an email notification on a shared account I'd forgotten to unlink. He came home the evening after I found out, and he was different. Lighter. Almost cheerful. He said he thought it would be good for both of them to attend the gala together, for appearances, he said, until things were formally settled. He wanted to be in that room. I thought about why for a long time, and what I concluded was this. Edmund had always needed to be seen as the larger talent in our marriage. When we were happy, it was manageable. He was proud of me in a way that also reflected on him. But once things fell apart, my nomination threatened something in him. I think he planned to use that event to get ahead of any future claim I might make. To be seen publicly as the supportive, composed husband while I was receiving an award partly built on work he had taken. He wanted the optics of that room. He was not the only one thinking about optics. I told him yes, we would attend together. I did not tell him what else I had arranged. The gala was held at the Hargrove Center downtown, a converted warehouse with 30-foot ceilings and exposed steel trusses that I have always loved for their honesty. 300 people, cocktail hour from 6, ceremony at 8. Edmund wore a navy suit. I wore a deep burgundy dress that my colleagues said made me look like I meant business. I told her I did. We arrived together. We smiled for the photographer at the entrance. He put his hand on my back for the photo, and I let him. And I remember thinking that was the last moment he would feel in control of that evening. I found the gala coordinator in the first 20 minutes and spoke to her quietly. I had an ask, modest, easy to accommodate, and she agreed without hesitation. I also confirmed, for the second time, that the 2 people I had invited as my personal guests had arrived. My lawyer and Margot were seated at a table near the side of the room. I had told them only that I might need them. They were there. Edmund worked the room the way he always did, easy handshakes, the right amount of eye contact, remembering names. Petra was not there, obviously. I noticed him making sure to introduce himself to the chair of the city planning committee and to the 2 senior partners from a development group that had been publicly evaluating the competition submissions, including the one that featured my bridge. That told me everything I needed to know about why he was really there. The ceremony started at 8. My category was called around 8:40. My firm's principal gave a brief introduction. I walked to the podium to polite, warm applause, and I looked out at the room. All those faces, many of them familiar, some of them people I respected enormously, and I felt something settle in my chest. I gave my prepared remarks. I talked about the Meridian project in the way I always talk about my work, specifically technically with genuine feeling for the structural logic that makes a design work. I talked about the years behind it. I mentioned the notebooks. I mentioned the simulations. I talked about the bridge as though it were my child because in all the ways that matter it was. Edmund was seated at our table, second row, center. I did not look at him while I spoke. Then I said, I also want to take a brief moment to address something that I hope will be the last time I need to address it in public. The room shifted. People who had been half listening put down their glasses. I said that it had come to my attention that the core structural framework of my Meridian design had been reproduced, without my knowledge or permission, in a recent competition submission by another firm. I said I had documentation, technical, time-stamped, independently verified, demonstrating that the design originated with me, and that those materials had been improperly accessed from my personal files. I said that my legal team had been prepared to file quietly, but that given the public nature of this nomination and the professional reputation of everyone in the room, I felt it was important to state clearly and for the record that the intellectual property in question was mine. I did not say Edmund's name. I didn't have to. There were exactly 3 seconds of complete silence. The kind of silence that has weight. Then I thanked the committee for the honor, held up the award, and walked back to my seat. I did not sit next to Edmund. I sat next to my lawyer, who had moved to an empty chair at the front as we'd arranged. She handed me a folder. I did not open it. I set it on the table and put my hand on top of it and looked at the stage while the next category was announced. I became aware, in my peripheral vision, of Edmund standing, of him looking at me, of several people near our table turning to look at him, of him sitting back down. Later, after the ceremony, after the room had broken into the particular charged noise of people pretending not to discuss what had just happened, a man I recognized as the lead partner of the development group that had been evaluating the competition touched Edmund's arm and said something brief and quiet. Edmund's face went through several things at once. I watched it happen from 15 feet away while speaking to a colleague about concrete tensile strength, which was exactly where I wanted my attention to appear to be. The competition submission was withdrawn within the week. I was informed, through my lawyer, that Edmund's firm had quietly removed him from the project and initiated an internal review. Petra, who had apparently been coordinating the file transfer, was placed on administrative leave. Edmund moved out the following month. We did not have a dramatic final conversation. I came home one afternoon and his things were gone, and there was a note on the kitchen table that said he was sorry. Not the first time he'd said that. I put the note in the recycling and made myself a cup of tea and sat at the kitchen table where my notebooks used to be. The Meridian project was formally submitted under my name 6 months later. It didn't win the contract. The city went with a less expensive design, which is often how these things go, and I have made my peace with it. But it exists now, in the public record, as mine. The load calculations, the simulations, the geometry, the years of thinking that went into it, mine. I have been asked, more than once, whether I regret how I handled the gala, whether it was professional, whether the right venue for that kind of statement was a room full of colleagues and a podium and 300 people mid-champagne. Here is what I always say. Edmund chose the room. He chose to be there, knowing what he'd done, planning to stand in the reflected light of work he had stolen. He wanted the public moment. He built his strategy around it. I simply made sure that the public moment told the full story. He wanted the room. He just didn't write the ending. The divorce was finalized 8 months after that evening. I kept the apartment. I kept the notebooks. I kept the work. There is a particular kind of grief that comes not from losing someone but from understanding who they actually were, from realizing that the person you mourned never quite existed in the first place. I have felt that grief, and I am honest about the fact that it is not small. There were months where the apartment felt wrong and silent, and I would walk past the kitchen table and feel something I couldn't name. But there is also something that comes after that grief, if you let yourself get to it. Something quieter and more solid than anything I felt when I was in that marriage. I go to work now, and the work is mine, and only mine, and I know every number behind it. I have started a new project, a pedestrian underpass with integrated stormwater management, which is the least glamorous sentence I've ever said about something I love. I work late sometimes, but it is my own lateness, chosen, belonging to me. I keep the Meridian notebooks on my desk, not because I am sentimental, or not only because of that, because they are the most honest record I have of what I am capable of when no one is watching. When it is just me and the problem and the scratch of a pencil on graph paper and the particular satisfaction of a load path that finally resolves cleanly, that, in the end, is what he couldn't take. He took the files, he did not take what made them. I've thought a lot about cause and effect since that night at the Hargrove Center. Not in any abstract sense, just the plain, unglamorous mechanics of it. How what we do compounds quietly over time, for better or worse, until one day, the weight of it becomes impossible to ignore. Edmund didn't make one bad decision, he made 100 small ones. He chose convenience over honesty the first time he picked up one of my notebooks with something other than curiosity. He chose ambition over integrity the morning he downloaded 217 files that didn't belong to him. He chose ego over everything the night he walked into that gala believing the room would always tilt in his favor. None of those choices happened in isolation. They built on each other, the way load accumulates on a structure, invisibly, steadily, until the material can no longer hold. I made choices too. I chose to stay quiet when my stomach tightened at Simone's comment about a helix bridge. I chose to trust someone I had stopped truly knowing. I chose for too long to keep my head down and believe that good work would protect itself. Those weren't failures of character. They were the natural result of loving someone and not wanting to see clearly. I understand that now without shame, but I don't pretend it cost me nothing. What I want to say, and this is the part I didn't understand until I was sitting alone in that apartment afterward, is that integrity is not a dramatic gesture. It isn't the moment at the podium, though that moment mattered. It's the 4 years of notebooks. It's the decision to document instead of confront. It's Margot working through file access logs with the same care I give to a load path calculation. It's my lawyer sitting quietly at a side table, a folder in her hands, present because I had done the slow, unglamorous work of being prepared. People want the revenge to be the story. I understand why. But the revenge was only possible because of everything that came before it. The discipline, the patience, the refusal to let grief make me reckless. That's the part worth holding on to, and the intelligence piece, because I think about this too, isn't about being smarter than Edmund. He wasn't unintelligent, he was incurious about consequences. He never asked himself seriously, what happens if she finds out? What happens if the access trail is traceable? What happens if she walks into that room having already built her case? Wisdom isn't raw ability. It's the willingness to think 3 steps forward and to take seriously the possibility that you are wrong. Vivienne. I still think of myself in the third person sometimes when I'm trying to be honest. Was not unbreakable. I sat in a parking garage for 45 minutes once, unable to move. I have felt lonelier in the months since the divorce than I expected to. None of that went away cleanly, but I kept working. I kept the notebooks on my desk. I kept going back to the problem in front of me, because the problem in front of me was always mine. That's what no one can take. Not the files, not the credit, not the room, the actual thinking, the years of accumulated understanding that made those notebooks mean something, that lived in me, not in a cloud folder. Edmund got the data. He never had access to what generated it. That distinction, I've decided, is everything.